how do we actually talk about these biases? How do we disclose them? Should they be disclosed by the companies that train these models? They have the training data. We've never seen the training data for a lot of these models. We don't know what ChatGPT is trained on. We don't know what kind of biases the company who made the model has kind of enforced, or like through cleaning the data, they've kind of maybe intentionally or not intentionally at all. We have to consider that. And we see that in many places as well.
My name is Kibogora, and I just seen that you have highlighted the point of AI biases. So AI is really biased because people who are building models and making, they are also biased because humans are biased, but in nature. Therefore, if we want to build AI that is not biased, we need to incorporate all diverse of people, like the team who need to build a model. They need to build from different backgrounds or different ethnicity, different, even the data themselves, they need to be diverse as to overcome that kind of challenges. And that's my input of to mitigate how AI can be unbiased, not biased. Yeah, thanks.
That makes a lot of sense. So I guess your point is, I'll paraphrase, to get a diverse data set, we should just include as many diverse sources as possible so that everyone is represented. I personally think it's kind of a challenge to do that, but I wish it was possible. And I think that is something to keep in mind when we build these data sets, make sure that everyone's represented. But how do you, there's no like little accuracy number. How do I tick the box and say, okay, I've got enough diversity now, I should probably end. So that's something we need to think about as well. But that's a really good point. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. So we thought about the first question. Is this a model data issue or prompt design issue? And we do think that is either data issue, and also it can be prompt design issue. And yeah, this because somebody would say that it's not the one who has the best model that will win, but the one who has more data. And if your data is biased, definitely your model is gonna learn to represent perfectly that bias. And in prompt design issue, it is a prompt design issue because if you set your prompt that is unclear, or maybe in your prompt you think that, okay, all women are caring, not all women are caring.
Oh, that's a hot take.
All the ladies here are caring, but okay. You think all men are confident and action focused? Not at all. So yeah, we include that by in the prompt, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I actually fully agree with you. I think prompt design is more of a flaw, but inherently the biases start from the data. I wouldn't even say it's necessarily the model. Maybe the model can overfit, but if your data isn't representative, it's probably your issue. Gemma, there's one more question over there. I think we're going to cut the questions short because there's actually a lot more sections here than I thought. But
hi, Victor Olufemi from Nigeria. I just wanted to share my own view as well. Personally, I believe that it is very hard. I don't want to use the word impossible to get a truly world diverse model because there will always be bias, both in the data and then we'll trickle down to the model. But what I think we can do is to try, both in the process of building the model, get a diverse team and incorporate some of those best practices. And more importantly is to come up with some sort of document, to disclose the biases that were found in it. And that could potentially help in the use cases that the models will be used for afterwards.
Yeah, so basically biases are kind of unavoidable sometimes. And perhaps if we're disclosing them and we have some documentation that says, okay, this is the kind of data we used for this model. These are the kind of biases we might expect. You know this, you're using the tool. Be aware of these biases that you're going to find in the data or in the model that is resulting from the specific data. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to move on to the next section, just in the interest of time. This is maybe one of the hottest topics, synthetic reality and deepfakes. You can basically take these image generation models. I guess you could do this with Photoshop as well, but now it's a lot more accessible. You can take someone's face and ask for a video of them doing something perhaps illegal, robbing a store or and many, many other things that I won't mention. But how do we handle these? How do we handle these deepfakes? Another scary example, it's become quite a big thing in South Africa at the moment, is identity theft. So these models use voice conversion. So it'll sound like my sister. It'll come from my sister's number because they can spoof it. And she says, oh, I need this from me. I need you to send me money or whatever. How do you handle that? AI is being used like maliciously for these purposes. And I would never know. It looks like my sister, sounds like my sister. How do I tell the difference? How do we handle these kinds of deepfakes? Also consent. So food for thought. Should consent laws be extended to cover likeness and voice? So let's take, for example, I think there's a big trend of using politicians in AI-generated videos where it sounds like a politician and they're discussing some random topic that obviously they didn't do, but it sounds super convincing because there's so much data for them, like Trump, for example, or Biden or whoever else. And they'll be having a fake debate on Instagram. So should consent laws exist for this? How do you control that? And should you be liable for harm caused by a synthetic clone of a real person? So I could do it for anyone. I could steal you and your identity, but I could cause a lot of harm that way. How do we control that? And how can we build and preserve public trust in media and institutions? So these models can do these things. How are they limiting it? I might jump straight into anyone who wants to talk about this since we don't have that much time. So if anyone, put your hands up and then Gemma will run towards you. I think this is a hot topic, so if you guys want to talk about it in your own time, then go ahead. What I might do is just move on to the next section then, perhaps. Oh, there's someone there. Gemma, please.
Okay, well, this is just off the top of my head. But yes, I feel obviously that we should extend consent laws because I can't imagine why you would not. Like, in what way is it good for us to have politicians or anyone's likeness being faked? Like, I feel in terms of like news and like people need to know the truth. And I think especially now with current events, that's really important. So I can't imagine what the arguments against extending consent laws would be. But yeah, this is just off the top of my head, but I really feel we should.
I guess the question from my side is, how do we enforce it? Maybe that would be a better way of phrasing it. How do we enforce these consent laws? Because everyone's just running free at the moment. How do you, but you also don't want to like police everyone at the same time. Cool. I'm gonna move on to the next section then. You guys are welcome to discuss this in your groups as well. This is an interesting one, and I've thought about this personally a lot, is generative AI in education. So generative AI is already reshaping education. So it's being used for lesson planning. It's been used as a tool for students to actually talk to and get information back. It's being used to actually generate content. So if I'm a teacher, maybe I'm late for my assignment, I can just ask ChatGPT, oh, I didn't make slides for the Indaba. Let me just ask ChatGPT. Maybe I made the prac with ChatGPT. You'll never know. No, I've got a lot of very amazing helpers for that. But so I guess the questions here are, should generative AI be allowed in assessments with disclosure? And I think there's two ways there. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but for asking the questions and then also being used in answering them. So should you be able to, let's say you have a take-home assessment, should you use something like ChatGPT as a tool to help you answer the questions? And then on the conversely, should I use AI to make assessments for you? Because that could introduce biases from the model. And then what kind of restrictions or guardrails should educators put in place for these kinds of things? Should they check that you're using these models? Are you thinking for yourself? You're just regurgitating what ChatGPT told you, or like what you saw in an image generation model. So it's a really good question. And then how might Gen AI affect skills like reasoning, creativity, and resilience? And that's a really big one. So if we're just letting ChatGPT or some other model think for us, generate our images without us really thinking about it, we're just not doing our critical thinking anymore. I think this happens like almost every generation though. First, people are Googling things, so they're not really thinking about it. Maybe back in the day, it was like newspapers, they're just looking at newspapers and not really thinking about it. So I guess the modern version of that is these Gen AI. Like I don't even know how to need to know how to program. I just vibe code everything. That's great. No, don't do that. You have to know what you're doing. But like, I'm doing less problem solving because of that. So does anyone have some hot takes on this? Any thoughts? There's one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, we can become too reliant on these tools and unable to solve problems for ourselves. I think about it like other tools in the past, other learning tools in the past we've had, like the calculator comes to mind. You know, obviously, like there's a way to, you know, do these calculations without a calculator, but it definitely helps us. It accelerates us. But I do think as part of learning, we should be able to do these tasks on our own first, especially when, you know, especially for people who are just getting started. They should be able to, you know, do division and multiplication on their own before like leaning on the calculator. And likewise with generative AI, I also think like, you know, just as a human, when you're expecting output from another human, like when you know that they use generative AI like too much, it makes you just like question, yeah, it doesn't feel as good as if you know, oh, they put their human mind to like, you know, construct an output. Like for example, you know, generative AI now is characterized by a lot of M dashes, which is like this kind of a dash. And whenever I see that in text from somebody, I'm just like, to be honest, my respect is just like goes down for them, because I'm just like, you know, you could have just written this on your own, even if it had spelling mistakes and stuff. I would have preferred that than like, you know, just knowing that you generated this 100% with generative AI.
So this is actually one of my personal pet peeves. I used to love using M dashes. I would put them everywhere. And now I can't use them anymore because it seems like I'm using ChatGPT. So it's such a weird dynamic. Like I just can't use them anymore. But I think what you're mentioning there, when it comes to like the whole education system, moving to the education system and having Gen AI available now, like that's a really, really big problem. Not maybe a big problem, but like we need to think about it really carefully, how we approach it. I'm personally very thankful that I went through the whole system. I went to university before these things existed so that I could actually problem solve. I know how these things work. I know how to code, maybe a little bit, but so I know what's happening under the hood, and I don't just blindly use these models. I use them as like an assistant. And I fully agree. I think people should probably make sure they understand what they're doing before they start using these tools to kind of do it all for them. I think there's some hands on this side that I saw.
Yep.
Perfect.
My name is Josiah Kimani from Kenya. I think the question is wrong. This is what I imagine, and I think we should be focusing on, instead of asking ourselves if we should use Gen AI in assessments. I think we need to reimagine how we do assessments, how we assess students. The systems that we're having in education are rewarding probably memorization or rote learning. And that is very easy. For instance, if I want to prepare for an exam, I'll go through maybe revision papers and then get more of like cram how questions are. And most of the time you realize that they still repeat those questions in exams. How about we change the approach into which we use in terms of assessing understanding? So probably working around projects. I feel like that engages the student even more, and the student is able actually even to explain and gain a deeper understanding into the concepts. Secondly, I think we should actually enforce students to disclose how they used AI in generating the answers. Because then that you can actually understand, you can help the student you can actually understand how the student is making use of these tools. Is it just copying, or is actually trying to actually understand the concept? So I think the big question should be how we reimagine assessment of education in the AI era. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You can round of applause if you want. I fully agree with that. We don't want the education system to be rigid. The matter of fact is these tools exist and they are here to stay. Why be rigid and what we used to call parrot studying? Why should that be the norm? We need to adapt. The question is, how are we going to adapt? How do we do this properly? Do we take time, but then we lag behind like with the assessments, or do we just do a whole reform of the education system right now, right here? And how do we go about that? But it's a really good point, and I agree with you. Things need to change. and the way we assess them needs to change. And I think having that transparency of allowing people, for your second point, of allowing students and encouraging students to say, okay, I use ChatGPT for this section. It really helped me understand this, this, and that. I think that's a good way to do it.
Yes, he has taken most of my words, but maybe let me just put it this way. Maybe we are in a new world where we need to redefine what we mean by competence. How we measure competence, basically, it has to change. Maybe the future doesn't need us to master knowledge the way it is currently defined. That is maybe reproducing what you have studied or what you understand. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I really like the way of thinking about it. It makes a lot of sense. It's like if I went through engineering and just refused to use a calculator, I'd probably fail, right? I can't do those calculations by hand. This is the new tool. We should learn to use it probably. And I guess that's one way to think about it. Whether people agree with that or disagree, we don't know. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 more questions that side. So Gemma, just one there and then one behind you, and then I think we can stop. 3 more.
Okay, I want to talk about the third point, how might the Gen AI affect skills like reasoning, creativity, and resilience? What I just want to say here is that there is an urgent need for training people to know how to use a Gen AI. Because we want it or not, there is already the tool is available there and people will use it. Now we need to train them about how to use it, how to go deep in the question, whatever assignment you have, how to do it, to use it in a better way that even without that, you can understand the assignment better and come up with something newer. So yeah, that's what I think about that.
Thank you, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we really have to, it's here. That's the fact. And we have to adapt.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Ibrahim from the Gambia. I think as a student, it is an undeniable fact that Gen AI, especially these large language models, are a source of knowledge for most of the students currently. And then like he said, right? Or like you just said now, if you go into engineering, you will not pass through engineering without using a calculator, because the calculator is a crucial tool that you use in your education. So I think if we are to move further in education, these generative AI models should be a crucial part of it, right? The same way we used to do Google search, it just became easier. Because I can remember there was a time before ChatGPT, I would have to go to Google, scour through articles, read books, just to get the information I want. But now, I just have to go and ask the model. It can do it will do the research, and then it will get the resources back with the answers. So if I want to do deeper research, I'll just go and consult those resources directly. But then I think anyone who is starting from now on should really learn how to use these tools effectively, just as you would if you're using a calculator. I can also remember a time, like in my primary school, I was not allowed to use calculator. Even though in my junior school, it was only when I went to senior school that I was allowed to use a calculator. So from junior to senior, I had to do all my calculations in my head or on paper, right? But then it got way easier in high school as I was able to tackle bigger problems than in junior school. So I think if we are going to, like the way forward would be to incorporate Gen AI in education and also increase the workload since the tool is making it easier right now. It was like Andrew Ng said, they're advising people not to learn how to code anymore since this Gen AI can write code. But that's completely wrong. You don't stop doing something when it becomes easier. You get more people to do it so that you can get more of that thing, right? And then I can say from experience, past few weeks, I have never done any mobile coding, mobile app development, but I had a personal problem. I was like, a mobile app would solve this thing. And I just said, let me get into it. I have a co-pilot in my editor, and we are building a mobile app. So I did my research, ChatGPT, Gemini. I scoured to what tools to use, how to use them, what are the integrations I need, how to solve the problem. Then I started solving the problem. I think that's a way forward that we can go. Thank you.
Yeah, I fully agree, actually. It is an amazing tool for learning, and it speeds things up. I've used it multiple times for fields where I don't know what's going on. I want to learn about something, networking, and maybe I come from a different background, so I might not understand the terminology used generally. So I can ask it like, word it in this way for me, like I'm a baby or whatever. And it really helps. And I think it should be used as people should know how it can be used as a tool, but you also need to consider the pitfalls and limitations. It's not all-knowing, it doesn't know everything, and it also makes mistakes. So even though we're using it as a tool, we need to remember that there are biases and there are mistakes as well. That's just something to keep in mind when using it for those sorts of things.